Thank you for joining me again. Today I'm going to talk mostly about one book, but if you go down this particular rabbit hole with me, you're going to be there for a while because there is a lot to it. So the book is called Bohica, One Man's Battle to Expose the Most Heinous Cover-Up of the Vietnam Saga by Scott Barnes. And if you look at the information down below, it is 712 pages. It was published in 1987. It's not really that long. There's about 250 pages of the story itself, and then a lot of supporting documentation. So that's significant. It is a fun read. It reminds me in some ways of another book that I read a long time ago, A Terrible Mistake, The Murder of Frank Olson, and the CIA's Cold War Experiments, which was a 912-page book, or 900-some page book. Very long, kind of over-documented. I don't buy much of what's in the story. As a matter of fact, one of the articles that he put in to support his assertions that he had in fact infiltrated Laos and cited American prisoners of war was an article published in Soldier of Fortune magazine about how he was a flake. So one character that comes up in this book, and frankly a lot of other books, is Bo Greitz, and I think that is the correct pronunciation of his name. I've seen it pronounced as, or I've heard it pronounced as Bo Gritz, but I think the correct one, and according to Scott Barnes, it's Bo Greitz. Well, Bo Greitz has been involved in a lot of weird stuff, including Operation Tailwind and the Randy Weaver on Ruby Ridge. He was somehow got himself involved in negotiating that situation. And Bo Greitz, is for sure, for real, a sort of super tough guy. Supposedly Rambo was in part based on him. But you know, his post-military career life, I think, was weird. And I do think part of this is that in the 1980s, there was a cottage industry of people looking for living prisoners of war in Laos. Some information about Bo Greitz in another book that I read a long time ago, Ruby Ridge, Truth and Tragedy. Now I have found a book that's going to go on my TBR that was actually written by Randy Weaver, The Federal Siege at Ruby Ridge, and I'll try to get a hold of that one. But again, this book, Bohica, sat on my TBR for a very long time, not because I didn't want to get a hold of it, but because I don't think it has been or ever will be digitized. I couldn't find it on like eBay or some of the other places where I've looked, and I wound up having to get it through an interlibrary loan. And when I got it, I was surprised because it was a big fatty. But lots of pictures, lots of supporting documents that you can kind of peruse at your leisure. Also, it's significant that it was published in 1987. The actions actually took place in 1981. But in 1984, the Chuck Norris film Missing in Action came out, and there's a lot of similarities there, I think. So the weirdness behind the Scott Barnes story really starts early, and he talks about how he was recruited to infiltrate the Hells Angels either while he was still in high school or directly thereafter, which seems odd to me. Also, it's serendipitous because I just finished No Angel, about a man who did infiltrate the Hells Angels, and that was also a very entertaining book. And I liked that one specifically because he was very forthright about how his Operation Black Biscuit was not a complete success. But so Scott Barnes gets weirdly into religion and opens a gift shop, which apparently was very successful, a Christian gift shop. And from there, he is recruited, for this top secret mission by Bo Greitz. How he would have come on Bo Greitz's radar is never really fully explained, and it just seems strange. Also, the stories that he tells are funny to me. I live in Vietnam, and I have been to Laos a few times, and I do know that there are some strange border crossings. So the one that he talks about in the book is not the main one across the Friendship Bridge between Thailand and Laos, Vientiane. But I've frankly been next to those guys telling their bullshit stories at the bars, and they're kind of aging out now a little bit. And it would be easy, frankly. I've been fortunate. I've been able to backpack through Asia a couple times, spend a significant amount of time. And yeah, there's times when you cross borders. There's times when you one time in particular, I got in the back of a pickup truck to go from Hatlek, Thailand to Phnom Penh. That was a bad decision, by the way. It was cheap, but it was the wrong decision. But those kinds of things, if you really wanted to, or if you were truly delusional, you could spin it into a real sort of tough guy, secret agent story if you wanted to. And I get the feeling that this is what happened here, but I also get the feeling that he genuinely believes what he's saying. So that's just my take on Bohica. And again, if you get a chance, and I did see that it's available on Amazon, definitely get it. It's a fun read. You'll enjoy it. And if you enjoy conspiracy theories in general, it does match up well with other conspiracy theories, including Iran-Contra and Vang Pao and the movement of drugs from Southeast Asia to the United States with the complicity of the American government. And yeah, I don't think you're going to be, I don't think many people are going to read this and walk away a true believer, but I do think it's worth the read.